السلام عليكم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. In the last session, we talked about Surah Luqman, chapter 13, verses 12 through 14, and the advices he gave to his son about not associating partners with God, about gratitude toward God and then toward the parents due to their role in bringing us to this world and taking care of us. And اشكر لي ولوالديك إلي المصير. With this image of compassion, the chapter directs people to the need to express gratitude to God, the first benefactor, and then to show gratitude to parents who are always ready to give to their children. These duties are given in order of priority. It was, be grateful to me and to your parents, in verse 14. This fact is linked to the reality of the hereafter, where it said, with me is the end of all journeys, at the end of verse 14. It is then at the end of the journey where only the good work sent ahead will be of benefit. Why? Because it is preparing for the next verse, where this bond between parent and child, with all its care, love, and sacrifice, nevertheless comes second to the bond of faith. Therefore, immediately after the statement enjoining man to be dutiful and thankful to parents, he is told, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإن جاهداك على أن تشرك بي ما ليس لك به علم فلا تطعهما. And should they strive to make you associate partners with me, something of which you have no knowledge, do not obey them. Verse 15. So the conversation goes back to shirk in order to emphasize and reinforce how important it is as a matter of faith and must be avoided at any cost. Here, the term jahadaka means strive, meaning if they try really hard to strive to make you associate partners with me, ma laysa laka bihi ilmun, something that has neither scientific nor logical basis, and it is rather based on ignorance, then you can disobey them in this regard. Which means obedience to parents is conditional. Should this happen, the duty of obeying one's parents is no longer valid. The bond of faith supersedes all bonds, even the parent-child bond or family bond. Hence, no matter how hard parents try to persuade, coerce, pressure, or force their son or daughter to associate partners with God, anyone whose lordship is unknown to them, they must not be obeyed. This is a command actually from God, whom all creatures must obey. However, even differences of faith and the command not to obey parents against one's faith does not deprive parents of their right to receive kind and caring treatment and companionship, as the verse continues and says, وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. But even then bear them company in this life, in dunya, with kindness and consideration. So that's again in verse 15. This life is after all a short journey that does not affect the truth, as the verse continues, وَاتَّبِعْ سَبِيلَ مَنْ أَنَابَ إِلَيَّ ثُمَّ إِلَيَّ مَرْجِعُكُمْ ثُمَّ إِلَيَّ مَرْجِعُكُمْ. Here it says, follow the path of those who turn towards me. Who are those? The prophets, the believers, people who believe the same thing you do. Not your parents if they have gone astray toward shirk. Of course, if the parents turn to God, turn to God's path, repent and turn to God's path, you should obey them as well. Then it says, in the end, it is to me that you shall all return. And this is very important for us to pause a minute. After this short journey that we have on earth, after this short stop on earth, all believers and unbelievers return to Him. If your parents did what they did, you do what you do. Know that the return is to me. Everyone from the age of puberty onward is responsible for himself or herself. Quran in chapter 19 verse 95 it says كلهم آتيه يوم القيامة فردا, and each one of them will come to him alone on the day of judgment. Parents, children, each to his or her own. Parents, however, should not feel responsible after the child reaches adulthood and becomes fully independent. We parents should not confuse responsibility with control. Children are gifts and favors from Allah, but also a trust, amana, from Allah. As such, parents are responsible in their upbringing, tarbiyah, the Islamic teaching, akhlaq, and ultimately providing them with a loving home. However, after they grow up and gain their independence, parents have no more control over them. Hence, there are no guarantees they will commit themselves to guidance, even after the parents have fulfilled all the responsibility in their upbringing. After all that, if they go astray, they are doing so on their own, and it is their responsibility. And that's what the verse that we just recited talks about. Back to verse 15, then it says, when I shall inform you about all that you were doing, where? In this life. It means you, your parents, everyone will be informed about their deeds through all the records. Therefore, everyone will receive the just reward according to their deeds after they see and read their own files, if you will. So this verse draws an order for bonds and relations and for duties. Thus, the bond of faith in God ranks right on top, and with it, the requirement to fulfill His orders. The Quran emphasizes this rule on every occasion and in a variety of forms so that it is internalized by the believer. It is solidly implanted in a believer's consciousness. So there can be no confusion or ambiguity about this. Now, what about the hereafter and the reckoning, the day of reckoning? At this point, God's statement ends and we pick up Luqman's conversation with his son. The next verse, Luqman's advice speaks about the hereafter and its accurate account of people's deeds and its just rewards to emphasize what was said in verse 15. However, its reality is not presented as bare facts. It is shown against a panoramic scene of the universe in an image, a picture that makes the human conscience tremble as it reflects on God's detailed and perfect knowledge. So it says in verse 16, it continues, Ya bunayya, إنها إن تك مثقال حبة من خردل فتكن في صخرة أو في السماوات أو في الأرض يأتي بها الله إن الله لطيف خبير. My dear son, if there be something which is no more than the weight of a grain of a mustard seed, and though it be hidden in a rock, or in the skies, or in the earth, God will bring it forth. God is subtle, all aware. This is about one's deeds. Now, what does deeds have to do with weight of a grain of mustard hidden in the rock? This is a Quranic style, drawing a vivid picture where God brings an analogy, a parable, in order to animate the concept here, being the day of judgment, and that no matter how small a deed may be, even as subtle as a wink, let's say, or a wrong look, any thoughts, any word, any deed, no matter how small or trivial, He will see it and bring it forth in that day. You notice here the term latif means subtle, meaning Allah sees and knows anything that is subtle, no matter how small. Of course, there's another meaning for latif, which is used in other parts, means gracious, but here it means subtle. This presents God's knowledge and its comprehensiveness, His power, and accuracy of accounting and fairness pictured through this clear and vivid image. A grain of mustard seed, without weight or value. Imagine, misplaced deep in a rock where it cannot even be seen or found. Or it could be in the skies, in the vast endless structure where a huge star appears no more than just a little dot or a floating particle. Or it could be in the earth, lost in its sand and dust, with nothing to indicate it. Nevertheless, God will bring it forth. Verse 16. He will account for it. His knowledge traces it. God is subtle, all aware. Inna Allaha latifun khabir. So our imagination continues to follow that mustard seed in those deep and vast areas. So we reflect on God's knowledge, which never loses sight of it. Hence our hearts are filled with awe, and as we turn to God, appreciating His knowledge of all that is beyond the, all of it is beyond the sphere of our perception. The surah continues with Luqman as he first advised his son about oneness of God and worshiping Him alone. Then God talked about having gratitude toward him and the parents. Then Luqman picks up, continuing with his advice about the day of judgment, the day of accountability. If one does not know who is the Creator, who is his Creator, and where he comes from, and where he is going, he is lost and would not know what to do next. If I believe this life is it, and when I die everything ends, then I might do something or I might do nothing. On the other hand, if I believe there is another life after this, and I will be responsible for my deeds in this life on that day of accountability, well, I might do something else. I must then prepare myself for it. That is why establishing the article of faith first gives clarity and purpose. Now, having established the faith in man's conscience, He now speaks about deeds like attending to prayer, advocacy of the faith, and perseverance in the face of inevitable difficulties, calamities. So then in verse 17, he says, Ya bunayya, aqim as-salat, wa'mur bil-ma'ruf, wanhu 'anil munkar, wasbir 'ala ma asabaka, inna dhalika min 'azmil umur. My dear son, attend regularly to prayer and enjoin the doing what is right, what is good, and forbid the doing what is wrong, what is evil, and endure with patience whatever befalls you. Indeed, this is firmness of purpose in the conduct of affairs. We note here, first he tells his son to establish prayer, then to enjoin what is good and forbid what is wrong. Why? The reason is one has to work on himself first before he goes out preaching and enjoining others to be good. He needs to practice it himself first by establishing the prayer multiple times a day. Prayer works on self-improvement, and it is a precursor to enjoining others to do what is right and forbidding what is wrong. Until a person built himself spiritually, until a person has built himself spiritually, he cannot go out and work on others. He will become part of those Quran refers to, أَتَأْمُرُونَ النَّاسَ بِالْبِرِّ وَتَنْسَوْنَ أَنفُسَكُمْ. Do you enjoin right conduct on the people and forget to practice it yourself? Chapter 2, verse 44. He becomes like them. So, the first thing is to establish prayer because إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنكَرِ. Chapter 29, verse 45. Indeed, real prayer restrains, keeps one from shameful and evil acts. Hence, first building oneself spiritually, then enjoining others on verse 17, as the verse 17 says. Plus, it shows how important the role of prayer is in Islam and its ranking. Then, wasbir ala ma asabak, enduring with patience when difficulties strike. This is a general statement which applies to any difficulties, like loss of a loved one, loss of property and wealth, or physical hardship. However, in the context of this verse, it can also refer to the difficulties you might face when you go out there and enjoin others on doing what is good or right and forbidding what is wrong or evil. You may face some difficulties there. They might call you names, call you backward, call you fanatic, make fun of you, slander you, label you, or even attack your faith, etc., etc. However, Quran says, وَاسْبِرْ عَلَى مَا أَصَابَكَ إِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. Endure with patience whatever befalls you. Indeed, this is firmness of purpose in the conduct of all affairs. This is a high-ranking task, important task. It is a task for which you must have a strong will and perseverance. Enduring with patience takes resolve. And if you want a shot in arm, just go and read the biography of Prophet, peace be upon him. Read his seerah and learn so many lessons when it comes to strong will, perseverance, and resolve. Such is the way of faith, declaring God's oneness, knowing that he sees all, aspiration to his reward, trust in his justice, and fear of his punishment. Now, this is followed by a call to people to maintain the right path, enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong. Prior to all this, however, we should ensure that we have the right equipment for a battle against evil. We should worship God alone, address prayers to Him only, and remain steadfast despite, any kind of adversity. Next, Luqman goes on to speak about the manners that should be characteristic of a believer who calls on prayer to adopt this divine faith. Such advocacy of good does not allow behaving arrogantly toward people under the pretext of leading them to what is of benefit. Needless to say, arrogant behavior that is not accompanied by even advocacy of goodness is even worse and more offensive. So in verse 18 he continues giving advice to his son. وَلَا تُصَعِّرْ خَدَّكَ لِلنَّاسِ وَلَا تَمْشِ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ كُلَّ مُخْتَالٍ فَخُورٍ. Do not turn your cheek away in contempt toward people, nor walk on earth with false pride, exalting yourself. God does not love anyone who is arrogant, boastful. So Luqman's advice is, do not turn away your face, your cheek, when answering someone's question, or even worse, ignoring him altogether. So the first thing in the verse talks about turning your face, ignoring someone, holding them in contempt as if they're not important, or to even humiliate them. Some commentators have said it has a deeper meaning, which is do not answer people or talk to them in arrogance. All of this comes from one's arrogance, like I have more, I know more, I look better, I have more power, I am more popular, and so forth. Therefore, you're not worthy of my attention. A believer, especially those with knowledge, should not take an arrogant position when answering questions, no matter how simple or how little the question is. They should not brush it off as unimportant. Don't turn away as if the person asking the question is not worthy. Oh, he's not worthy of my company. He's not worthy of my answer. I'm much bigger, better, more popular. In drawing this image of arrogance, the surah uses the Arabic term tusa'ir. Tusa'ir, which is translated here as turn away, and khadda, which means face, cheek. The term tusa'ir is derived from the disease called sa'ir, which affects camels, causing them to involuntarily turn their necks sideways. They just involuntarily turn their necks. This surah chooses this term in order to describe the repugnance, the distasteful of turning one's cheek away from people in a gesture similar to what camels affected by this disease do. Then it continues, وَلَا تَمْشِي فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرْحًا, nor walk on earth with false pride, exalting yourself. Walking conceitedly in false pride is another type of behavior suggesting carelessness about people and their feelings. This is again a gesture that is disliked by Allah and people. As the end of the verse says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ كُلَّ مُخْتَالٍ فَخُورٍ. God does not love anyone who is arrogant, boastful. In another verse in Quran, chapter 17, verse 37, it says, It starts similarly. It says, do not walk on earth with false pride, exalting yourself. You will never tear open the earth. In other words, crack through the earth, nor attain the height of mountains. Referring to no matter how conceited you may be and how highly you think of yourself, how big you think of yourself, you cannot cause any impact on earth or be as big as earth and as high as its mountains in terms of significance. Quran also talks about the people who are exact opposite and calls them true servants of Allah, as it says, وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. And the servants of Allah, the most gracious, are those who walk on earth in humbleness. And when the ignorant address them, they say peace. Chapter 25, verse 63. So, walking in arrogance is a sign of a sick mind and a self-centered person. And as the verse says, God does not love anyone who is arrogant, who is boastful. You know, exalted is only He. Only He is exalted. Nothing, and you know, we need to keep this in mind, nothing we have on this earth, in this world, belongs to us. Nothing except our deeds, of course. Allah is the actual owner, Malik. لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. We are given few things for few days to use within our very short life on this earth. So, when nothing you have is actually yours, why so be arrogant? Why should you be so arrogant? Why be so self-centered? Why be so egotistical? إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ كُلَّ مُخْتَالٍ فَخُورٍ. Luqman's advice to his son continues in the next verse. وَاقْصِدْ فِي مَشْيِكَ وَاغْضُضْ مِنْ صَوْتِكَ إِنَّ أَنْكَرَ الْأَصْوَاتِ لَصَوْتُ الْحَمِيرِ. And be moderate in your pace, in your bearing, and lower your voice, because the harshest of voices is the braying of donkeys. Verse 19. You know, braying of donkeys, you know, when they make that noise and scream. So here, most people have translated وَاقْصِدْ فِي مَشْيِكَ as being moderate in a physical pace or walk. Do not walk in extreme. However, if we go to other places in Quran, like chapter 6, verse 122, we learn mashya. Mashya means right course. And aqsid means the middle, moderation, balanced. And the term iqtisad comes from the same root word, meaning balancing economy or leading the economy in the middle. So here, waqsid fi mashyika means pursue the right course in life. Live a balanced life, not in extremes. The same word yamshi is used in the same verse, chapter 6, verse 122, that says, أَفَمَنْ كَانَ مَيْتًا فَأَحْيَيْنَاهُ وَجَعَلْنَا لَهُ نُورًا يَمْشِي بِهِ فِي النَّاسِ. Is he who was dead when we gave life and give him a light with which he walks among people, like the one who is in depths of darkness? Here, in this verse, where it says given light with which he walks among people, does not refer to a physical light like a flashlight and a physical walk. By giving light, Quran means guidance or guiding light. And by walking among people means living and leading his life. So it refers to leading his life or walking through life with the light of guidance. With the light of guidance. So back to verse 19, we should have the same meaning. Be moderate in your pace, in your bearing, leading your life in the right course. Another interpretation could be that the advice that was given earlier, not to walk in conceit, in false pride on earth, is coupled with a statement about the proper way of walking. Be of modest bearing in your walk. In this verse, such modesty is expressed in Arabic with the word waqsid. Waqsid with connotation of economy and definite purpose. The economy aspect referred to here is the need not to waste energy in a boastful, arrogant manners. And the purposeful walk, not a meaningless walk, purposeful walk is one which does not waste time. Rather, it moves towards its goal easily. And then at the end of verse 19, Quran gives another analogy or proverb comparing a loud, harsh voice as donkeys braying. وَاغْضُضْ مِنْ صَوْتِكَ إِنَّ أَنْكَرَ الْأَصْوَاتِ لَصَوْتُ الْحَمِيرِ. And lower your voice, for the harshest of voices is the braying of donkeys. You know, sometimes one raises his voice so people can hear him, which is okay. But then there are times one raises his voice for no good reason. He just likes to be loud. He disrupts others or shouts to muffle others' voices. Sometimes you see people getting into an argument. One raises his voice and the other raises his voice over him. So people can only hear him, not the other guy. They continue raising their voices on top of each other. They don't want to just take turns, speak with lower voice, presenting their case, and let the people decide. Luqman here urges his son to lower his voice, which is a mark of politeness, self-confidence, and reliability. Only an impolite person or one who has self-doubt or uncertainty about what he says resorts to speaking loudly as he tries to disguise such doubts by raising his voice. Sometimes some people cannot carry on a discussion, a debate, because they do not have the supporting argument. Hence, they disrupt others by raising their voice in order to muffle voices of others. The surah shows this behavior as repulsive, adding to its abhorrence with the comment, and lower your voice, for the harshest of voices is the braying of donkeys, which is called taqbih, or denouncement, where one puts his deed next to another deed that is repulsive. Then he realizes how repulsive his own deed is. Quran uses such technique in various places beside this verse 19. For example, regarding backbiting, I'm just bringing this as an example so we see how the Quranic analogies work. For example, on backbiting, chapter 49, verse 12, it says, لا يغتب بعضكم بعضا أيحب أحدكم أن يأكل لحم أخيه ميتا فكرهتموه. Do not backbite one another. Would one of you love to eat the flesh of his dead brother? Meaning, instead of washing him, burying him, he starts eating off his flesh. You see, Allah makes an analogy of backbiting to eating flesh of one's brother in faith. Why? How? What is the connection? Here is what it means. That brother you are backbiting is not present to defend himself, just like a dead body who cannot defend itself. By backbiting, you are reducing him, dishonoring him, damaging him or his reputation. It is as if you are eating off the dead flesh, reducing it. By attracting the attention of others, you're trying to attract the attention of others, being life of the party. You are feeding yourself, your ego, your desire to be popular, of his flesh, of his reputation. I hope that's clear. Hence, Allah puts your backbiting deed next to the one who is eating the flesh of his own brother's dead body, to show the repugnance. Here in verse 19, Quran does the exact same thing. Do not raise your voice for no reason. Don't disrupt, don't shout, as the harshest of voices is the braying of donkeys. When one raises this and realizes the analogy between the two deeds, he will lower his voice. In conclusion, all these verses 12 through 19, not only talked about fundamentals of faith, they talked about being thankful, building oneself through prayer, and the enjoining others to do good, and forbidding them from doing evil, doing wrong things, pursuing the right course in life, enduring in patience in times of difficulties, and then continued with few moral etiquettes, starting with avoiding arrogance and conceit and polite manners. We ask Allah to increase our iman and protect us from any shirk, large or subtle. We ask Allah to make us among those with gratitude, shakirin. We ask Allah to help us understand and put to practice these advices. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والسلام على من اتبع الهدى.